Professor Haynewell stood at the large window of the Galactic Academy of Military Sciences, looking at the 3 moons of Centauri Prime floating in the purple sky. His new office was bigger than he expected, with high ceilings that made him feel small. But that feeling wasn't new. Everything in the academy was built for beings much taller than humans. He turned away from the window when he heard a soft knock on his door. "Come in," he said, straightening his dark blue uniform with its shiny Earth Defense Force pins. A tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms entered the room. Administrator Kthax had to bend down to get through the door, even though it was twice as tall as a human door. "Professor Haynewell, I trust you're settling in well." The administrator's voice was deep and pleasant, coming from somewhere in their long neck. "Yes, thank you," Haynewell replied with a polite bow. He had learned that most alien species appreciated Earth's Asian customs of showing respect. "The room is very comfortable." Kthax moved to one of the specially made chairs that could hold their weight. "I must be honest with you, Professor. Many of my staff are concerned about having a human teach advanced warfare strategies." Haynewell nodded slowly. He had expected this, because I come from a death world. "Precisely." Kthax's 4 hands made a gesture that meant apologetic agreement in their culture. They believe that Earth's methods of warfare are too primitive, too violent. Haynewell walked to his desk and picked up a data tablet. He had spent the morning reviewing the Academy's teaching materials. "I noticed that your current curriculum barely mentions Earth's military history. There's only 1 paragraph about human warfare, and it's not entirely accurate." "Oh." Kthax's head tilted to the side, showing curiosity. "It says that humans rely only on brute force and overwhelming numbers to win battles. That's not true." Haynewell put down the tablet and looked directly at the administrator. "We survived and thrived on Earth because we learned to be smart, not just strong. We had to be creative because we were never the biggest or strongest species on our planet." Kthax's skin changed color slightly, showing surprise. "But surely your methods can't compare to the advanced tactical systems developed by the Looming or the strategic algorithms of the Centauri." Haynewell smiled. "Would you allow me to prove otherwise?" "What do you suggest?" "Let me give your students a practical demonstration. Theory is good, but experience is better." Haynewell walked back to the window and gestured at the training grounds below. "I saw that you have combat simulation chambers. We could use those." Kthax stood up, their tall frame casting a shadow across the room. "The simulation chambers are very advanced. They're designed for species with much more evolved military traditions." "All the better," Haynewell said. "Let your students see how human tactics work against their most advanced systems. If I'm wrong, and our methods are truly primitive, then no harm is done. But if I'm right..." He let the sentence hang in the air. The administrator was quiet for a long moment. Their skin shifted through several colors as they thought. Finally, they spoke. "There will be resistance from the other professors, especially Professor Xan. They are very proud of their advanced teaching methods." "Then let them challenge my methods," Haynewell suggested. "In fact, I welcome it. The best way to learn is to test your beliefs against different ideas." Kthax made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Professor Haynewell. But you intrigue me." They moved toward the door, having to bend down again. "I will speak with the faculty. But be prepared. If they agree to your demonstration, they will not make it easy for you." "Thank you, Administrator. That's all I ask for. A chance to show what humans can do." After Kthax left, Haynewell returned to the window. Below, he could see students from dozens of alien species moving between classes. Most of them were from what humans called garden worlds, peaceful planets with perfect weather and few natural predators. They had never known what it was like to fight for survival every day. He touched one of his medals, earned during the Mars colony crisis, when quick thinking and creative tactics had saved thousands of lives. These aliens thought humans were primitive because they came from a dangerous world. They didn't understand that facing danger was what had made humans strong. Hanul picked up his tablet again and began making notes. He would need to prepare carefully. The other professors would try to prove that human warfare was outdated and simple. He smiled to himself. They were about to learn that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective. As he worked, a message appeared on his tablet. It was from his teaching assistant, Sangmin, who had arrived at the academy a few days earlier. "Professor, I've been talking to some students. They're curious about you, but also scared. One of them asked if it's true that humans eat their enemies after winning a battle. I think we have a lot of work to do." Hanul laughed quietly. Yes, they had a lot of work to do. But that was fine. Humans were good at doing difficult things. That's how they had survived on their death world. And that's what he would teach these aliens, that sometimes the hardest path made you stronger. He began writing his lesson plans, knowing that soon he would have to prove everything he believed about human warfare. The aliens would expect him to fail. But Hanul knew something they didn't. Humans were at their best when others underestimated them. Outside his window, the three moons continued their dance in the purple sky. And somewhere in the academy, his future students were about to learn that their ideas about humans were about to change forever. The meeting room of the Galactic Academy was filled with tension. Professor Hanul sat at the large oval table, surrounded by alien professors who towered over him. The morning light from the purple sky made patterns on the polished surface of the table. Professor San, a tall looming with silver skin that sparkled in the light, stood up to speak. Their voice was cold and clear. "Administrator Cathax, this is unacceptable. How can we allow a Deathworlder to teach advanced military strategy?" Hanul watched calmly as the other professors nodded in agreement. He had expected this reaction. Sangmin, his teaching assistant, sat beside him taking notes on a tablet. "Professor San," Cathax said from their place at the head of the table, "Professor Hanul comes with excellent recommendations from Earth's Defense Force. His strategies saved many lives during the Mars colony crisis." Mars colony. San made a dismissive gesture with their long fingers. A simple colonial dispute. Nothing compared to the complex military operations we study here. Hanul spoke up, keeping his voice steady and professional. "Perhaps we could let the results speak for themselves. Professor San." The room went quiet. Even the soft humming of the air systems seemed to pause. "What do you suggest?" Cathax asked, their skin showing interested colors. "A challenge," Hanul said. "A practical test of military strategy. Your best student against mine." Zan's silver skin flickered with patterns of disbelief. "You want to pit a human student against one of ours in tactical combat?" In the simulation chambers, Hanul nodded. "Complete safety, but real strategy. Unless you're afraid to test your advanced methods against our primitive tactics." The other professors murmured among themselves. Hanul could see them exchanging glances. He had challenged their pride, and now they couldn't easily refuse. San straightened to their full height. "Very well. I choose Kita, my top student. They have mastered every advanced battle algorithm in our database." Hanul smiled slightly. "I choose Jiwoo, the quiet human exchange student." San's laugh was like tinkling crystals, the one who sits in the back of the lecture hall. "Yes," Hanul said simply. He had watched Jiwoo carefully during the first week of classes. The student rarely spoke, but their questions showed deep understanding of military history. "This is acceptable," Cathax announced before anyone could object. "The simulation will take place in 1 week. Both students will command equal forces in a standardized battle scenario." After the meeting, Sangmin hurried alongside Hanul in the corridor. "Professor, why did you choose Jiwoo?" "Kita has won every tactical competition in the academy for the past 3 years. Did you know that Jiwoo specialized in studying ancient Earth warfare?" Hanul asked as they walked. "From Sun Tzu to modern guerrilla tactics, sometimes the old ways are the best ways." They reached Hanul's office, where Jai Wu was waiting outside. The students stood straight when they approached, showing proper respect with a bow. Ji Wu, Hainul said, "Please come in. We need to talk about your role in an upcoming demonstration." Inside the office, Ji Wu listened quietly as Hainul explained the challenge. Their face showed no emotion, but their eyes were sharp and focused. "They expect us to use their standard tactics," Hainul said. "Their advanced algorithms and perfect formations. We won't do that." "What will we do, Professor?" Ji Wu asked. It was the first time Hainul had heard them speak in more than a short sentence. "We'll show them how humans really fight." Hainul activated his desk display, showing historical battles from Earth, not with perfect plans, but with adaptation. Not with advanced technology, but with creativity. Jai Wu leaned forward, studying the battles with intense interest. "They think we're primitive because we come from a dangerous world." "Exactly," Hainul smiled. "They don't understand that danger made us stronger. Their perfect worlds made them inflexible. They've never had to adapt to survive." Over the next few days, news of the challenge spread through the academy. Students gathered in groups to discuss it, many placing bets on the outcome. Most laughed at the idea of a human student beating Kita. In the library, Kita studied the latest tactical algorithms, surrounded by admiring students. Their silver skin glowed with confidence as they memorized complex battle patterns. Meanwhile, in Hainul's office, Ji Wu studied different materials, Earth's rainforests and how guerrilla fighters used them, desert warfare tactics from ancient times, and mountain combat strategies. They learned how weather and terrain could change a battle, and how to turn an enemy's strength into a weakness. "Remember," Hainul told Ji Wu during one of their preparation sessions, "they expect us to fight like them." "That's their first mistake." "And their second mistake?" Ji Wu asked. "Thinking that being from a death world makes us primitive," Hainul answered. "They forget that surviving on Earth taught humans to be creative, to adapt, to find ways to win against stronger opponents." The day before the simulation, Professor Xtan visited Hainul's office. The looming professor had to duck to enter the door. "There's still time to withdraw," San said, trying to sound kind. "Save your student from embarrassment." Hainul looked up from his desk. "Thank you for your concern, Professor, but we'll take our chances." After San left, Sangmin shook his head. "They're so sure they'll win." "Good," Hainul said. "Overconfidence is a weakness. Tomorrow, they'll learn why humans survived on our death world. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in a battle isn't the strongest fighter, but the one who knows how to think differently." That evening, as the 3 moons rose in the purple sky, Hainul watched Ji Wu practicing in a small simulation room. The students' movements were quick and unpredictable, nothing like the perfect patterns the academy taught. Tomorrow would be the test, not just of Ji Wu's skills, but of everything humans had learned from their harsh world. Hainul smiled as he watched his student work. The aliens were about to learn that sometimes the best warriors weren't the ones with the most advanced technology, but the ones who knew how to use everything around them to win. The last few days before the simulation brought excitement to the Galactic Academy. Students crowded the hallways between classes, talking about the upcoming battle. Most of them had never seen human military tactics in action. In the main cafeteria, Kita sat at the center of a large group of admirers. The looming students' silver skin glowed with confidence as they explained their strategy. "The human will try to use brute force," Kita said, their voice carrying across the room. "That's what Deathworlders always do, but our advanced algorithms can counter any direct attack." At a small table in the corner, Ji Wu ate quietly while studying a tablet. The screen showed maps of different terrains: mountains, forests, deserts. Sangmin sat down across from them with his lunch tray. "Everyone's talking about the simulation," Sangmin said. "They think Kita will win easily." Jai Wu looked up from the tablet. "Let them think that." In Professor Hainul's office, preparation took a different form. The walls were covered with images of Earth's greatest battles. Not the ones with the biggest armies or the most advanced weapons, but the ones where clever strategy had defeated superior forces. "Look at this," Haynul said, pointing to a picture of an ancient mountain pass. 300 defenders held off an army of thousands, not because they were stronger, but because they used the terrain to their advantage. Jiwu studied the image carefully. "The simulation will let us choose the battlefield." "Yes," Haynul nodded. "Kita will expect us to pick an open plain for a direct battle. That's what they teach here. Face your enemy with superior force and perfect formations." "But we won't do that," Jiwu said, understanding in their eyes. "No," Haynul smiled. "We'll choose something more interesting." Later that day, Professor Xan held a special lecture about advanced battle tactics. The lecture hall was full of students eager to see the famous professor demonstrate their methods. Haynul sat in the back, watching quietly. Xan's silver skin sparkled as they showed complex battle formations on the large screen. "These patterns have been perfected over centuries," they said proudly. "No primitive tactics could possibly counter them." Several students turned to look at Haynul, expecting him to react. But the human professor just watched calmly, taking notes on his tablet. After the lecture, 2 alien students stopped Jiwu in the hallway. They were tall, elegant creatures with flowing movements. "Is it true that humans learn to fight before they can walk?" one asked, their voice mixed with fear and curiosity. "I heard they practice war games as children," the other added. Jiwu looked at them carefully before answering. "We learn to survive," they said simply, then walked away. In the simulation control room, technicians worked to prepare the systems for the upcoming battle. Administrator Kathax supervised personally, making sure everything would be fair. The human student came to inspect the simulation controls, one technician reported. They asked strange questions about weather patterns and terrain features. Kathax's skin showed curious colors. Did they request any special settings? "No," the technician said. "They just wanted to understand how everything worked." But they spent a long time studying the environmental controls. That evening, Haynul found Jiwu in the small practice simulation room again. But instead of running combat drills, they were practicing something different. "Weather patterns?" Haynul asked, watching the swirling clouds on the simulation screen. "Yes," Jiwu said. "On Earth, we learn to use everything around us. Weather, terrain, even darkness. The aliens think these things are obstacles to be overcome. We know they're tools to be used." Haynul nodded with approval. "They expect us to fight like them, to try to match their perfect formations and advanced algorithms. When we don't, they won't know how to react." "Professor," Jiwu asked, turning from the controls, "why did you choose me for this? There are other human students here." Haynul walked to the window, looking out at the 3 moons rising in the purple sky. "Because you understand something important. You know that surviving on Earth wasn't just about being strong. It was about being smart, being creative, and most importantly, being unpredictable." The next morning, the Academy buzzed with last-minute predictions and bets. Kita's supporters were confident, already planning their victory celebration. The few who supported Jiwu were quiet, but their eyes showed determination. In Haynul's office, Jiwu reviewed their final preparations. The student's face was calm, focused. "Remember," Haynul said, "they think being from Earth makes us primitive. They don't understand that Earth taught us the most important lesson of all." "What lesson is that, Professor?" "That the most dangerous fighter isn't the strongest one." Haynul smiled. "It's the one who knows how to use everything around them to win. Tomorrow, we'll show them what that means." As night fell over the academy, both students prepared in their own ways. Kita ran advanced battle simulations, their silver skin glowing with each perfect formation. Jiwu stood at their window, watching the weather patterns in the purple sky, seeing possibilities that others might miss. Tomorrow would change everything, not just for Jiwu and Kita, but for how the galaxy saw humans and their way of fighting. The aliens would learn that sometimes the best warriors weren't the ones with the most advanced technology, but the ones who knew how to think differently, adapt quickly, and turn any situation to their advantage. The three moons cast long shadows across the Academy grounds, and somewhere in the darkness, two very different students prepared for a battle that would prove once and for all whether advanced algorithms could beat the lessons learned on humanity's dangerous homeworld. The day of the simulation arrived with all three moons aligned in the purple morning sky. The Academy's main simulation chamber was packed with spectators. Students and professors filled every available space, their voices creating a constant murmur of excitement. Administrator Kathak stood on the central platform, their skin showing formal colors. Today we witness a unique demonstration of military tactics, they announced. Both competitors will command equal forces in a virtual battle environment. Professor Tan stood next to Kita, making final adjustments to their student's neural interface. The looming student's silver skin rippled with confident patterns. On the other side of the chamber, Henul helped Jai Wu prepare. Remember, he said quietly, they expect us to fight their way. Don't. Jai Wu nodded, face calm as they connected to the simulation system. The neural interface felt cold against their skin. Competitors will now choose their battlefield, Kathax announced. Kita moved first, as expected. Their silver fingers danced over the control panel, selecting options. Open terrain, they announced. Perfect for proper battle formations. Jai Wu stepped forward next. The room went quiet as they studied the available options. Finally, they'd made their choice. Mountain range with variable weather systems. Whispers spread through the crowd. This was not a standard choice for tactical combat. Professor Xan's skin flickered with amusement. An interesting choice, Thathax said. The simulation will begin in 3 minutes. Both commanders have equal forces, 500 ground units, 20 air units, and standard support systems. The large screens around the chamber lit up, showing the virtual battlefield. Mountains rose into cloudy skies, with deep valleys and thick forests below. Weather indicators showed an approaching storm system. Begin, Kthax commanded. Keita moved immediately. Their forces deployed in perfect formations, spreading across the valleys in geometric patterns that the Academy had proven effective over centuries. Their air units formed a precise grid pattern above. Jewu did something different. Their forces split into small groups, disappearing into the forests and mountain passes. The air units didn't form any pattern at all, instead flying wild paths between the peaks. What are they doing? Someone in the crowd asked. There's no structure to their deployment. Professor Chan smiled. As expected, chaos and primitive tactics. But Henul watched calmly, seeing the plan unfold. Jigu wasn't fighting chaos. They were using it. Kita's forces advanced in perfect lines, their sensors scanning for the scattered human units. The Silver students' confidence showed in every movement. This was how battles were meant to be fought, with precision and order. Then Jiwu began their real strategy. First came the weather. Using the environmental controls that they had studied so carefully, Jiwu called up storm winds in the mountain passes. Kita's perfect formation started to break as wind gusts forced their units to adjust. Weather is a natural obstacle, Kita announced. Our formations will compensate. But Jiwu wasn't finished. As Kita's forces reformed their lines, small groups of human units appeared from the forests, struck quick blows, and vanished again. Each attack was small, but they came from different directions, forcing Kita's forces to constantly shift and respond. Fight properly, Kita demanded, their silver skin showing frustration patterns. Face us in open combat. Jai Wu didn't respond. Instead, they triggered landslides from the mountain slopes, blocking some of Kita's units from supporting others. The storm intensified, making it harder for the looming forces to maintain their precise formations. This isn't proper warfare, Professor Xan protested. They're using the environment as a weapon. Yes, Newell said quietly, just as we learned to do on Earth. The battle continued. Kita's forces had better technology and perfect tactics, but they were fighting an enemy that wouldn't stand still. Every time they tried to force a direct battle, Jiwu's units would fade away, only to strike again from unexpected directions. The audience watched in growing amazement as Kita's perfect formations began to fall apart. Their forces were scattered, trying to fight an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. "This isn't fair," Kita protested as another group of their units was cut off by a sudden fog bank in a mountain pass. "They're not following any of the standard battle protocols." "No," Jiwu spoke for the first time since the battle began. "We're following protocols that Earth taught us. Use everything available. Adapt. Survive." The end came not with a dramatic clash, but with a series of small defeats. Kita's forces were split, confused, and eventually surrounded by an enemy they couldn't predict. Their perfect algorithms couldn't handle an opponent who turned weather, terrain, and chaos itself into weapons. "Simulation complete," Kathax announced. The screen showed the final result. Jiwu's forces had achieved their objectives, while losing fewer units than Kita. The room was silent. The aliens had just watched their most advanced tactical systems fail against what they had called primitive human warfare. Kita stood motionless, their silver skin showing patterns of disbelief. "But our formations were perfect. Our algorithms were flawless." "Yes," Jiwu said softly. "That's why they failed. You fought the way you trained to fight. We fought the way Earth taught us to survive." Newell stepped forward. "On Earth, we learned that perfect formations mean nothing when a storm hits. Advanced algorithms can't help when an avalanche cuts off your supply lines. We learned to use everything around us because we had to survive on a world that challenged us every day." The room remained quiet as the aliens began to understand. They had called humans primitive because they came from a dangerous world. Now they saw that this same dangerous world had taught humans to be more adaptable, more creative, and more dangerous than any perfect battle formation. The day after the simulation, the Galactic Academy of Military Sciences felt different. Students walked the halls speaking in quiet voices, often stopping to look when Jiwu or Professor Newell passed by. The usual noise and excitement were replaced by thoughtful silence. In Administrator Kathax's office, the morning sun cast purple shadows through the tall windows. Newell sat across from the administrator's desk, while Professor Khan stood near the window, their silver skin showing subtle patterns of deep thought. "Your demonstration yesterday has caused quite a stir," Kathax said, their skin shifting through colors of interest and concern. "Many of our long-held beliefs about military strategy need to be reconsidered." "Not reconsidered," Newell replied gently. "Expanded. Your advanced tactics aren't wrong. They're just one way of thinking about warfare." Sand turned from the window. "But your student used no standard formations, no proven battle algorithms. They turned the environment itself into a weapon." "Yes," Newell nodded. "Because that's what Earth taught us. When you live on a world that can kill you with a storm, a landslide, or a sudden temperature change, you learn to understand these forces. And understanding them means learning to use them." "Tell us more," Kathax requested, leaning forward. "Help us understand how your world shaped your way of fighting." Newell stood and walked to the window, looking out at the academy grounds where students from many worlds walked between classes. "Imagine growing up on a planet where everything is a potential threat. The weather can change in minutes from calm to deadly. Large predators hunt in the forests and oceans. Even the plants can be dangerous." "It sounds terrible," Tan said, their voice softer than usual. "But it taught us important lessons," Newell continued. "We learned that survival doesn't always mean being the strongest. Sometimes it means being the smartest or the most adaptable. We learned that every challenge could become an opportunity if you looked at it the right way." In the main lecture hall, Jiwu was giving a presentation to a packed audience. The quiet student now spoke with confidence, showing images of Earth's varied environments. This is a rainforest, they explained, pointing to a dense green landscape. Early human warriors learned to use the thick vegetation for cover, the rain for concealment, the terrain for advantage. They weren't following perfect formations. They were adapting to their environment and using it to their advantage. The alien students watched with fascination. One raised their hand. But surely with advanced technology, these primitive tactics become obsolete. Jiwu smiled. Technology is a tool, not a solution. In yesterday's simulation, Kita had the same technology I did. The difference was how we used it. They tried to impose order on the environment. I worked with the environment instead. Back in Kithax's office, Sang-min had joined the discussion, bringing data from the simulation. The most interesting thing, he said, showing graphs on his tablet, is that Jiwu's forces used less energy and resources than Kita's. By working with the environment instead of against it, they were more efficient. Efficiency born of necessity, Haenul explained. On Earth, we couldn't waste resources. Every battle, every survival situation, taught us to use what we had wisely. Kithax's skin showed patterns of decision. Professor Haenul, we would like to make some changes to our curriculum. Your demonstration showed us that we have been limited in our understanding of military strategy. I would be honored to help, Haenul said. But remember, the goal isn't to replace your methods, but to add to them. Each species brings its own wisdom to warfare, shaped by their homeworld and their history. Later that day, Kita asked to meet with Jiwu. The two students sat in the academy's garden, under trees with silver leaves that chimed softly in the breeze. I've been thinking about the simulation, Kita said, their silver skin showing honest patterns. I realized something. I was so focused on making perfect formations that I forgot to look at what was around me. That's what Earth teaches you, Jiwu replied. To always be aware of your surroundings, because they can help you or harm you. Will you teach me? Kita asked. Not to replace what I know, but to add to it. Jiwu smiled. Of course, and perhaps you can teach me about your advanced algorithms. Together, we might create something new, a way of fighting that combines the best of both our worlds. The sun was setting, turning the purple sky into a dozen shades of twilight. In his office, Haenul looked at the message on his tablet. The Academy's board had approved a new course, Adaptive Warfare, Lessons from Earth. He would teach it together with Professor Xan, combining human adaptability with alien precision. Professor, Sang-min said from the doorway, the first-year students are asking if you'll tell them stories about Earth. They want to understand where our tactics come from. Haenul smiled. Tell them I'll do better than that. I'll show them. It's time they learn that being from a death world doesn't make you primitive, it makes you resourceful. And sometimes, being resourceful is the most advanced strategy of all. Outside, the 3 moons rose in the darkening sky. In the Academy's halls, students from 100 worlds discussed new ideas about warfare and survival. The lines between advanced and primitive, between order and chaos, were beginning to blur. And in that blurring, something new was being born, a deeper understanding of how different worlds shaped different ways of fighting, and how each way had its own wisdom to teach. The Deathworlders had taught their lesson, and the galaxy would never look at human warfare the same way again.